Hello and welcome to ScreenBlitz, the weekly film and television show giving you all the news, views, reviews, previews, features, opinions and more that you need to know. I'm your host Grant Burton. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grant Burton, or you can go to forcefightgrant.wordpress.com for all of my written reviews, if you want. On today's show I'm going to be reviewing Ozark Season 2, Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan, as well as Deadpool 2's Super Duper Cut, and we also have a lot of news items to get through too. If you enjoy the show and you're watching this on YouTube on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday or Friday, I'd appreciate it if you subscribed. 100 subscribers is my current goal. At 100 subscribers I get a custom URL, makes it easier to share. Speaking of sharing, share this across social media. Let other people know about it. If you don't like it, someone else might. If you're watching this live on Twitch, get involved in the chat. We'd like to have a little hangout at the end of the show where we talk about all the discussions. I would really appreciate that. But it's time to get on with the show, and we start each and every week with the news. First item is from Ben Travis and Nick DeSemlian at Empire. Die Hard 6's title is McClane. The cop versus terrorist action saga is set to continue in an upcoming sixth film, simultaneously following Bruce Willis as a 60-year-old McClane and a younger incarnation of McClane in his 20s. And while the project has been rumoured to be called Die Hard Year 1, the script has a different, cleaner title, McClane. So, for me, Die Hard is dead. It can't be revived, it can't be brought back. After the last film, A Good Day to Die Hard, it's just hit rock bottom, because that film, in my opinion, is one of the worst films ever made. I liked Live Free or Die Hard 4. That's my second favourite of the Die Hard films, but the last one was just awful. So what they need to do is reboot it if they're going to do anything. This might be them trying to do that, but why still having Bruce Willis in it? I don't like the title McClane. McClane does suggest a reboot, but it's going against the formula of the Die Hard titles, and I don't like that at all. But yeah, the original Die Hard as well, was not that an origin story? Because I'm assuming he didn't go on any adventures. I'm assuming he didn't stop terrorists or do anything of huge significance prior to that film. So it seems a little odd how they're going back to his 20s when I'm assuming he'll be like a beat cop or something. And yeah, it just seems like they're trying to get as much out of this franchise as they can while Bruce Willis is still around and while he still kind of cares about it. But yeah, I'm not excited for this at all. Next story. Joe Utterson from Variety. Henry Cavill to star in the Witcher series at Netflix, and he'll be playing the lead role of Geralt of Rivia. So, I'm a big fan of the books, and I love the video games, particularly The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Henry Cavill is not who I would have thought of originally, but I got mixed thoughts about this altogether. I don't think he's a terrible actor, but I don't think he's a good actor either. This is a role which I think he could potentially be alright in, but it's hard to say without putting on the makeup and the wig, because Geralt of Rivia has a very distinct look, and he also has very distinct mannerisms and a very distinct voice. So if Henry Cavill can't do that, this is going to be really odd and unusual. So yeah, it's one of them things we'll just have to wait and see how it turns out. Could be good, could be bad, but yeah, Henry Cavill not the first person I would imagine taking on this role. But that being said, he is a fan of the video games, he is a fan of the books, so that's good. When doing video game adaptations, you often get people who've never even played or heard of the property they're adapting. So this does have some hope in there. So yeah, don't judge it too harshly just yet. Next story. Steve C at Joe Blow. Len Wiseman to direct and produce Swamp Thing for DC Universe. So Len Wiseman, we've already spoke about one of his films, Live Free or Die Hard, also known as Die Hard 4. I think he's a perfectly fine director. He's also probably best known for the Underworld franchise. DC Universe is the DC streaming service, which I believe comes out this month in the United States. The Swamp Thing TV show probably not going to be out till next year sometime. And it shows that they care by bringing in these big names and big directors and producers to work on these shows. They are trying to make this a worthwhile thing because they want the subscribers, they want people coming in and actually paying them to get this content. So yeah, Len Wiseman, probably a good choice. I don't know much about Swamp Thing, so I don't know if he'll have. I'm not sure if his version of Swamp Thing will be faithful or not. I don't think it'll be a unique thing, but yeah, time will tell. Final news story of today. The Academy Awards will no longer have the popular film category. The Academy said that adding the new Oscars category merits further study, stating, "The Academy recognised that implementing any new award 9 months into the year creates challenges for films that have already been released. The Board of Governors continues to be actively engaged in discussions and will examine and seek additional input regarding this category." So, it's probably a good thing that they've got rid of this. The problems when they reveal this is, one, the name popular implies that this is just going to be a popularity contest, implies that maybe it's just going to be the mainstream blockbuster movies. So to single them out and say that these are somehow different from all the other movies is wrong, I think. And it was also a mistake to reveal the name of this category without actually saying what the requirements were, what sort of things will be up for nomination. So yeah, it's probably a good thing to go back on this and to rethink it, but at the same time, the Academy and other awards ceremonies need to start acknowledging these big mainstream films, the films that the majority of people are actually going to see. So, yeah. It's a bit disappointing now though, because it means films like Avengers Infinity War, Black Panther, and all these other big blockbusters, Mission Impossible Fallout, might not get any recognition beyond like special effects and choreography and so on. But yeah, that's it for the news. We're moving on to trailers now, but first, just a reminder, give me a subscription, I really would appreciate it. Give me a thumbs up and leave a comment down below on YouTube. If you're watching this on Twitch, get involved in the chat, we'll talk a bit more in a minute. But let's get straight back onto trailers. BoJack Horseman. Next season of BoJack Horseman is a week away, and they released a trailer for it just the other day. What I like about BoJack Horseman is that it's an animated comedy that isn't afraid to be serious and to tell a compelling, dramatic story. It's not the funniest thing ever. It really does tell a story that seems to matter and that's important. And I think because it's in animation, because it's given a comedy flavor, let's say, it means that this story isn't too deep and too depressing, because this is a tough story to get into, especially if you get rid of the comedic elements. But yeah, it's not the funniest thing ever, but another thing I like about BoJack is that it's a show you kind of have to pay attention to, because a lot of the comedy is actually in the background. You'll have characters walking around who are doing things or saying things, and while you're paying attention to what's going on in the foreground, that's where the comedy is. It's in the background. So I really like that. It's very creative and inventive at times as well. So yeah, the trailer, not got much to say about the actual trailer we saw this week, but it looks like it's more BoJack, which is a pretty good thing. I just hope this show doesn't go on and on and on forever, because I think it's at risk of repeating itself. It already has kind of done that a little. Next trailer, Halloween. So I spoke about this a few weeks ago. Halloween is one of my most anticipated films this year, which is bizarre because I've only ever seen the original Halloween, and I'm not a big fan of horror movies or of slasher films like this. But for some reason, this film just looks like it's going to be really good. They're getting all the right people involved. They've got John Carpenter doing the score. The score in this trailer, by the way, brilliant. Loads of different variations of the iconic theme song, Give Me Goosebumps and all that lot. So I really got high hopes for this film, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to this despite not being a fan of the franchise. Final trailer this week was Narcos Mexico. So Narcos, I think, is one of the most underrated shows on Netflix. I think it's very thrilling, very exciting, but where it suffers is that it doesn't always focus on the characters that much. This season looks like a bit of a reboot. I think it's going back in time. I think it's like in the 70s or 80s or something. So it's not continuing from the last season. And it's got new actors in there. Pedro Pascal is gone, which is a little disappointing because it looked like they were setting up a storyline for him in this season, but it doesn't look like that's happening. Maybe they're going to do a time jump and get back to that in season 5, but we'll have to wait and see for there. But I do like the new leads. You got Diego Luna and Michael Pena, I think it is, and yeah, this could be a bit of a reinvigoration, a bit of a reboot for the series. But yeah, a lot of potential in this. If you've liked what you've seen so far, again, subscribe, leave a comment, get in the chat, have a load of fun. Thanks for watching so far. Now we are moving on to reviews, and I've got a few reviews this week. First up is Ghost Stories. So, Ghost Stories came out this year. It's a horror film, but it's a little different. I don't think there are many horror films like this, because what it is, it's basically 3 short horror stories presented with an overarching narrative that connects them all. And it's about a paranormal investigator who likes to debunk cases to prove them wrong, and basically an old famous paranormal investigator hands them these 3 cases that he could never debunk, and off you go. These 3 stories are these cases. So the paranormal investigator goes to each of these stories and tries to debunk them. Or does he? Because that's one of the problems with this film. It's all about debunking these cases, but you never actually see him do it. It's always, he just shows you the stories, shows you what happened, and then next thing you know, he's like, nah, that didn't happen. He doesn't really go into much detail on that point. That being said, the 3 short story elements of this. One is from the perspective of Paul Whitehouse, which is a brilliant short story in itself. Like, it's really, really well done. It's the best part of the movie. Really scary, really atmospheric and moody, and a great performance by Paul Whitehouse. The other one is from the guy from The End of the Effing World. Brilliant actor. He's going to be something special at some point. And yeah, his is probably the weirdest of the 3 stories. But yeah, his performance really does carry you through it. The final story is with Martin Freeman, and a little underwhelming, that one, I'm going to say. But yeah, the overarching narrative is fine, I suppose. It's the least interesting element of the film. The problem is that the main character, who is also the director and co-writer of this, he's just not that interesting. So the best parts of the film are the stories themselves rather than the main plot of the film. And one of the problems I have with this film is the score. The score of the film is really over the top, over dramatic, and it kind of, sometimes in horror films you get rid of the score, you get rid of all of the sounds, you get dead silent, because that builds tension. But in this, it kind of goes the opposite way, and it uses the score to try and mimic that, when it would have been better to just dial it back a bit. So yeah, the score is a little disappointing at times, particularly earlier in the film. But I really like this film up until the final 20 minutes. The final 20 minutes are bad, just bad, because the film goes from being one thing to then being something else, and then it tries to explain what you've just seen, and it does a good job of explaining it at the end. The very end is actually okay, because it does wrap up what you've seen and it does explain things, but it doesn't. The problem with the final 20 minutes is everything just goes a bit weird, and they try to be a bit smarter than what they actually are, and yeah, it's a little disappointing, because it goes from being grounded to being fantasy, basically. So yeah, going into a little bit of spoilers now, just to, well, full spoilers, let's see. So full spoilers, if you don't want to know what happens, stop here, jump ahead to the next review. But yeah, the final 20 minutes. Basically what happens is, it turns out none of this is happening. It's all in his mind, and he's in a coma. And all of the things that you see here, and all of the stories are just what this character is experiencing, seeing and hearing while being stuck in a hospital bed. So all the characters showing up are actually doctors and cleaners from the hospital. So it does a good job of actually explaining this at the end. But when it's revealing all of this information, when things start to fall apart and you've got characters pulling off their really bad prosthetic faces, and you've got like them just swiping down like backgrounds as if they weren't there, it just really takes you out of it, and it's like, what the hell's going on here? But yeah, it does wrap up pretty nicely, but it's really disappointing that they went in that direction and they didn't try to keep it grounded and keep it being about ghost stories and horror. So yeah, disappointing ending, but I would recommend the first like hour, 10 minutes of this film, and particularly the Paul Whitehouse short story. That could really be good as a standalone film itself, because that's really well done. So yeah, that's Ghost Stories. Next one is Ozark Season 2. So let's first talk about Ozark Season 1. When Season 1 started, it was a little on the slow side. It wasn't entirely original because it's full of crime story cliches, plot devices, and characters. But after like 3 or 4 episodes, I think Ozark really became something special. Yeah, it still had the unoriginality element of it, but it became really tense and exciting. And then I think by the end of the season, it was really, really good. There's an event at the end of the first season, which is, alright, this is slight spoilers. It's similar to an event at the end of season 1 of Game of Thrones. So if you've seen that, you probably know what I'm on about. But basically, something happens that basically says, right, from now on, anything can happen. And that's exactly where season 2 kicks off from. Anything can happen in this season, which means that everything that happens in season 2 is full of tension. It's really moody and atmospheric, and at times there's just a lot of like uncomfortable elements of this show that's going on. You, the characters are really, really likable, particularly Jason Bateman and Laura Linney, who brilliant in this. Jason Bateman got a Emmy nomination for the first season, acting and directing. It's really well directed, great cinematography. Production wise, it's top notch. But season 2 is significantly better than the first season. It is still a little on the slow side at times, and I'm interested where season 3 is gonna go. But yeah, it does a great job of being a really moody, tense show with lots of twists and turns. It does a good job of introducing new problems in like natural and believable ways. There are some characters in there who are just so, I want to say juicy, but that's not a really good way to describe a character. But there's just characters who feel so real and who are both frustrating and annoying, but at the same time likable. So it really does a good job of coming up with these characters. But yeah, really good season. If you haven't seen season 1, go and see it. Stick with it through the first 3 episodes, because you really do have to get through them episodes before it starts to kick in. Not to say that the first 3 or 4 episodes of season 1 are bad, they're just not on the same level as everything else. But yeah, now going into spoilers. Ozark season 2. There's a new character in season 2, Janet McTeer, I believe her name is, the actress that is, and she's brilliant. If you've seen Jessica Jones season 2, she's the mother in that. But yeah, she comes in as a lawyer for the cartel this season, and every scene she's in is just brilliant. She's a really good actress, and she has this element of power and authority about her. Every time she's there, because she is a very tall woman, she has a demanding posture, and she always seems in control of everything that's going on. She always seems intimidating, yet friendly at the same time. So really well done. And another thing, there's a character that is briefly in the first season, and that is a father of Ruth. He has a much bigger role this season, but you can totally see where his character's going. It's not that unpredictable. You can see exactly from when he comes in to where he ends that, spoilers, he's going to die. There's also returning characters who come in every now and then. It's much more of like recurring roles this season than the first one. But yeah, Ozark season 2, I thoroughly recommend it. One of my favourite shows of the year so far. Now for Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan. So, Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan is a thrilling and exciting show. The best way to describe Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan is, if you've seen Homeland, it's like that, but where it's putting more emphasis on the action and the thrills than it is on the characters. And that's not to say the characters in Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan are bad, it's just Sometimes they aren't entirely interesting. Sometimes the things you're finding out about them don't really add a huge deal to them. They don't make them any better or worse. And they are very well acted. John Krasinski is really good as Jack Ryan himself, even if they do really overemphasize the fact that he's a good guy, very righteous. They actually repeatedly say that, oh, you're a good guy, or you're very righteous, and it does get a little repetitive. That's kind of all he is. You do get more on this backstory, particularly towards the end of the season, and he does have an interesting backstory. The other character is played by Willard Pierce, and I believe his name's John Greer or Jack Greer. Yeah, he's kind of comes off worse off than Jack Ryan because you never see him outside of the main narrative. So whenever it is telling you about his character, it's always just him sitting there kind of talking about himself. So yeah, that's something they need to work on for the second season, which is going to happen. They need to do a better job of just getting these characters to be a bit more interesting. But that being said, the show is very exciting, very good. There's only 8 episodes, it does fly by, it's very fun and enjoyable. But yeah. Also, just while I'm talking about it, the other thing I want to talk about is the enemies of this season, or the antagonists or the villains, whatever you want to call them. It's a little disappointing that in 2018 the enemies are your kind of stereotypical Muslim terrorists. I feel like now should be a time where you move on beyond that, because that should be a thing of the past. But I will say this, they do make the main characters, the main villains, very sympathetic and relatable. So while they are doing horrific terrorist acts, you can see their perspective in a way. Although it does, spoilers, it does kind of just go back into being just, oh, it's this religion versus that religion, and it does narrow things down a bit when it was originally a bit more of a revenge story. But yeah, villains, disappointing, and the characters on the whole, disappointing, but very well acting. And yeah, I would recommend you watch the show because it is fun and enjoyable. Final review is Deadpool 2. Now, full disclosure, I've not seen the theatrical cut of Deadpool 2. This is a review of the Super Duper cut, which is on the special features of the Blu-ray and the digital release, which is what I've got. So, I'm going to start this by saying I think it's better than the first film. The action and the story and the characters are just really well done this time around. Not that they weren't well done the first time, but you can see they've got a bigger budget. You can see that there's a different choreographer there. They've got David Leitch, who done John Wick, the first one, and you can tell that he's doing this film because the action and choreography is like really good this time around. The most disappointing thing about this film is the jokes. Deadpool, the original Deadpool, arguably is just a comedy with action scenes. It's also a superhero film. This time around, I think the film works really well as an action film, it works really well as a superhero film, but as a comedy it kind of falls flat. The jokes are really hit and miss. A lot of them just don't work at all. Some of them are also really repetitive. There's a constant joke about dubstep, which feels really out of place and pointless, and it just never works, and yet they repeat it like 4 or 5 times throughout the film. And yeah, Deadpool 2, the Super Duper cut, I would recommend this film. I do think it's fun as an action film, as a superhero film, but if you're wanting more of the comedic elements, you might be a little disappointed. But then again, comedy is subjective, so you might love it. I will be interested in going to watch the theatrical cut, because I do think the Super Duper cut is a little on the long side. So there's an extra 15 minutes in this version of the film, and I believe they've also altered certain scenes and lines of dialogue throughout the original version. So I might go back and watch the original version to see how that compares, to see if that is better. But yeah, it is a good film. It's just disappointing that some of the jokes are bad. Spoilers now. Deadpool 2. The main thing I want to talk about is one of the villains, which is Juggernaut. So Juggernaut, one of my favourite X-Men characters, shows up in this film, played by Ryan Reynolds, who also plays Deadpool. And I like the performance. What I don't like is the look of the character. I like how they've tried to go full comic book with it, making him a huge guy, but the proportions never seem right. It looks like he's got tiny legs and a huge shoulders and torso, and it just looks odd. It doesn't look real at all. But the CGI is actually pretty good. It's just, yeah, it looks like they've tried to make him look peculiar, and yeah, it doesn't quite work that well. Josh Brolin's character in this film is really well acted because Josh Brolin's brilliant. Great action scenes, but that's kind of all he does. All he ever does is show up and fight, which is fine. It's an action film, but they give him a brief backstory, which is basically his family's being killed, so he's gone back in time to try and kill the person who killed his family, and it's all very Terminator-like. There are jokes referencing Terminator and linking him to the Terminator. But what's really disappointing about his character is how he goes from being this intimidating, almost scary individual to then all of a sudden he's like asking Deadpool for help, despite the fact they've been fighting throughout the entire film. So the change from being a potential villain to being an ally and then even being a good friend is just really sudden, really quick, and it doesn't work that well. So yeah, that's a bit disappointing. But yeah, Deadpool 2 on the whole, really good film. I liked it better than the first. I loved the action scenes, particularly the opening scene of the film, which is full of action, and there's a chase with a truck going through a city, which is really well done. Domino, the character of her, she's brilliant, really fun and enjoyable. So yeah, be interesting to see where Deadpool goes from here, because as we know, Marvel has bought Fox and now has the rights to this back. But yeah, Ryan Reynolds, brilliant as Deadpool. He is Deadpool. He really just becomes that character. So yeah, and that's all I've got for this week. But just a couple of little things I want to talk about now. While we're talking about Marvel, this week they revealed the first look at Captain Marvel, the upcoming film starring Brie Larson. And I don't know much about Captain Marvel, but the actual look of her on the cover of the AW magazine, or is it AW? I think it's AW. She looks great. She looks the part, and yeah, great actress. I really like her. I've seen her in other things, so that's something. The other thing that was revealed in this was the Skrulls. Again, I don't know much about them. From the comic books, they look like goblins and ghouls from like Lord of the Rings, and in this, they look like Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z. So I don't know where they've went with that. They also look like some cheap knockoff Star Trek villains. So yeah, the look of these characters I'm not that impressed with. They are supposed to be aliens, I think. So it does kind of make sense. I just think they should have been a bit more creative and original with them, because they do have similarities with other things. There was also a teaser this week for the next season of House of Cards. So this is some slight spoilers. If you've seen the first 5 seasons of House of Cards, if you followed the news about House of Cards, then it probably isn't going to be a spoiler. But in this teaser, it's revealed that Kevin Spacey's Frank Underwood is dead. So yeah, it's kind of what we expected from this. We know Kevin Spacey's not in the next season at all. This season's going to be shorter as well. What I'm a little concerned about is, are they doing a time jump? And then are they going to try and explain how he died? Or are they actually going to try and show us that without it being Kevin Spacey? Because that's going to be risky. And also, Kevin Spacey, very much the main character of the show. Weirdly, he's the main protagonist and the main antagonist of this show. So what happens when you remove that element altogether? Obviously, Robin Wright's stepping up to be the main character this season, but what's her opposition? What's the antagonist? What's she trying to fight against this season? Is there going to be any of that? Because I don't know how this season's going to wrap up the story, because it is the final season. But yeah, time will tell. I like Robin Wright. I think the show is pretty good, but it's went on far too long. But yeah, Kevin Spacey has really messed things up for them. Speaking of House of Cards, kind of. Speaking of Netflix though, definitely. Designated Survivor has been renewed for another season at 10 episodes. And I feel like Netflix has done this because House of Cards is ending, and they want a political White House set show on their network, or their streaming network. And Designated Survivor could be that. I watched the first season of Designated Survivor, and it was okay. It was like a cross between Homeland and The West Wing. When it was more like The West Wing, it was good. When it was more like Homeland, it wasn't. I don't know what happened in season 2. I don't particularly care. But yeah, this show, for it to be a success, I think it has to be more political and current and less about thrills and action. But yeah, that's that. The final story of today is probably the worst one of the week. It's sad news, sadly. Burt Reynolds has passed away at 82 years old, and yeah, he had a heart attack, I believe. Burt Reynolds, very much an old school, golden age of Hollywood kind of actor, and it's in the 70s and 80s, he was like the big star of the 70s and 80s. At one point, he was the highest grossing actor on the planet. He was very much what we would see now as like Dwayne Johnson. And yeah, a really good actor, underrated at times. He often went for more entertaining mainstream roles rather than big dramatic roles, despite the fact that he could act seriously and in big roles. Look at Boogie Nights, for example. He got an Academy Award nomination for that. And Burt Reynolds has said himself that he wished he took on more challenging and demanding roles because he could have really done well in them. But that being said, the films he did do, Cannonball Run is probably my favourite Burt Reynolds movie. The comedy in that film really does not hold up. It's very inappropriate now, but it's still very fun, very enjoyable and entertaining. He also done Deliverance, which a lot of people say is his best film, but I've never actually seen that. And a lot of people probably pointing out Smokey and the Bandit. So yeah, go watch a Burt Reynolds movie. I recommend Cannonball Run, but it is dated now. Watch the second one as well, that one's alright, but don't watch anything beyond that. Boogie Nights is also a really good one as one of his later films. Well, is it one of... No, I suppose it's not, it's like 20 years old now. But yeah, it's definitely probably his best performance, Boogie Nights. He did get an Academy Award, like I said. Academy Award nomination, that is. But yeah, shame he's died. But yeah, he'll be missed. And yeah, that's the end of the show now. Yeah, I feel like I've ended the show on a downer, but oh well. If you've liked what you've watched on YouTube, you could subscribe. Give me 100 subscribers for a custom URL. That's my current goal. Give me a thumbs up as well. I'd really appreciate that. Leave a comment down below. I will get to that if I have the chance. If you're watching this on Twitch, get in the chat right now. Although my Twitch app doesn't seem to be working properly. And this is like 2-3 weeks now. So there could be lots going on in the chat and I just can't see it. But yeah, nothing's showing up at all. And that is odd. But yeah, if you're watching this on Twitch, give me a follow. I will try and sort out the chat because there is something wrong there. Maybe the stream's not working. But yeah, I'm Grant Burton. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grant Burton, or you can go to forcedbygrant.wordpress.com for all of my written reviews. I'll be back next week, same time, 11 AM GMT-ish, approximately. It changes every week roughly because, well, stuff happens. And yeah, hope you've enjoyed it, but I'm out.